The phone screamed into the silence of my room just after 2 a.m., a jarring noise that always signaled a fire I was expected to put out. I saw the name on the screen, and a familiar, heavy feeling settled in my gut before I even answered. It was my mother, Sharon, a woman who had spent her entire life mistaking her daughter's constant neediness for love and my quiet independence for a cold, uncaring heart. Her voice was a frantic mess, a cocktail of tears and commands that tumbled over each other. My sister, Chloe, the family's radiant golden child, had been arrested. Of course she had. Apparently, the brand-new convertible, the one they'd gifted her for being so special while I was patching tires on my 10-year-old truck, had found its way into the town square's historic fountain. She was behind the wheel, intoxicated and, from the sounds of it, completely unremorseful until the flashing lights appeared. My mother didn't ask for my help or advice. No, she demanded my obedience. "You need to get down here and do something," she insisted, her voice sharp with accusation. Then came the line that finally broke something inside of me, a quiet snap that no one else could hear. "Your sister's life is just starting. She has a brilliant future. I can't say the same for you, wandering around with no real job." I stood there and listened in complete silence, letting the insult hang in the air between us. No real job? The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. She had no idea what my job was, because she never cared enough to ask. She just saw my absence as failure and my silence as shame, filling in the blanks with her own preferred narrative. "The least you can do is be useful for once," she added, her tone dripping with a disappointment that had been my lifelong shadow. I just held the phone, feeling the weight of 20 years of being the invisible son, the dependable afterthought, the family disappointment, all of it collapsing into this one single moment of stunning clarity. He was the rock. He'll be fine. He's tough. He doesn't need us. Their excuses became my identity. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. It was just the loudest echo of a story they had been telling me my whole life. But tonight, that story was going to get a new ending. As I drove through the sleeping town, the rhythmic sweep of the wipers did little to clear my head. The past has a funny way of showing up in the rearview mirror, clearer than the road ahead. My mother's words echoed in the dark cab of my truck, and I found myself drifting back nearly a decade to my own high school graduation. I remember standing in the living room, diploma in hand, full of a nervous kind of hope. I had a plan, a part-time job lined up, community college courses, but I needed a reliable car to make it work. I wasn't asking for a handout, just a little help with a down payment on a safe used vehicle. That was when I first heard the phrase that would define my relationship with them. "Money is tight, son," my dad had said, clapping me on the shoulder with a strained smile. I was introduced to my father, David, a man who saw his son's quiet stoicism as a character flaw, and his daughter's loud theatrics as a sign of vibrant passion. He told me that day that true character was built through self-reliance. It was a good lesson, I suppose, but it felt hollow when all I needed was a little faith. So, I worked 2 jobs that summer, saving every penny. I eventually bought a rusty, coughing sedan that smelled perpetually of oil and desperation. I was proud of it, but also keenly aware of the lesson I had truly learned, that in this family, I was on my own. My independence wasn't a choice, it was a requirement. 2 years later, that lesson was carved into stone. I was home on a short leave for the grand affair of my sister's 18th birthday. It was then I formally understood my sister Chloe as the family's charismatic but reckless golden child, a girl who wore her charm like a suit of armor against any and all consequences. The whole backyard was decorated, a catered affair for a girl who'd never worked a day in her life. My father was holding court by the grill, beaming, telling everyone who would listen about Chloe's incredible potential. After we ate, he and my mother led us all to the driveway for the main event. There it was. A brand new convertible, gleaming under the afternoon sun, adorned with a ridiculously large red bow. As Chloe squealed with delight and hugged them, I didn't just see a car. I saw the $20 bills I'd scraped together for gas. I saw the nights I'd spent in the college library because my laptop had died, and I couldn't afford a new one. I saw every single time they'd said money is tight transformed into a shiny metallic lie. My father caught my eye and gave me a look that said, "See? This is for people with a future." He didn't understand that his version of a future was something bought, while mine was something I had to bleed for every single day. The injustice of it was so profound, so blatant, that it stopped feeling like a sting and started to feel like a certainty. This was the core of their family dynamic. the great unspoken truth that governed our lives. It was a carefully constructed false narrative, where every action was spun to fit the story they wanted to tell. Chloe was a creative spirit, which was code for being irresponsible and needing constant bailouts. She was sensitive, which meant she couldn't handle criticism or the consequences of her own disastrous choices. Their coddling wasn't just support, it was a shield, protecting her from the realities of the world, a world they had thrown me into head first. And me? Oh, I was the strong one. "You've always been so tough," my mother would say, as if it were a compliment instead of an excuse for her neglect. "You don't need us coddling you." They celebrated my forced independence because it freed them from the obligation of parenting me. They mistook my silence for contentment and my resilience for a lack of need. It was easier for them to see me as a low-maintenance son than to admit they were playing favorites on a level that was fundamentally unfair. They weren't just parents, they were authors, writing a story with a hero and a side character, and I was never meant to be the hero. So, when I was 19, I made a choice. I walked into a recruitment office and signed my life away. When I told my parents I was joining the military, they reacted with a familiar blend of pity and disappointment. They imagined I was running away, that I couldn't hack it in the real world, and was choosing an easy way out. The irony was almost too much to bear. I let them believe it. I let them think I was a drifter, a failure, because their misunderstanding became my armor. It kept them at a distance, giving me the space I needed to endure the single hardest thing I would ever do, to be broken down and rebuilt into someone they couldn't possibly imagine. Their false narrative was the wall I built behind me, allowing me to focus on the fire in front of me. Lying in my bunk thousands of miles away, their version of me became a ghost, a fiction I let them live in. But after that phone call, I realized I wasn't just coming home to bail out my sister. I was coming home to bury a ghost. "I'm on my way." I spoke the words into the phone, and my own voice sounded foreign to me, flat, cold, and devoid of the pleading emotional undertone they were so used to hearing. I clicked the phone off before my mother could launch into another round of frantic instructions or guilt trips. The connection was cut. In that absolute silence, something fundamental inside of me shifted. It wasn't a loud, angry explosion, but a quiet, chilling settling, like a layer of ice forming over a turbulent sea. The years of hurt didn't just disappear. Instead, they crystallized, hardening from a dull, throbbing ache into a diamond-hard point of purpose. I was no longer a son seeking the love of his family. I was an operator with a mission. The objective was simple: dismantle their entire narrative. Not with anger, not with yelling, but with the cold, undeniable weight of a reality they had spent my whole life avoiding. My family had written my story for me, and now I was simply going to show them the real manuscript, every single page. The receipts I carried weren't scraps of paper or screenshots of texts. They were the calluses on my hands from tasks they couldn't imagine. They were the scars hidden under my shirt, each one a testament to a commitment they'd dismissed as failure. They were in the way I stood, the way I assessed a room, and the look in my eyes that they had always misinterpreted as sadness. I walked to my closet and methodically got ready. I bypassed the uniforms hanging in the back, the ones that represented my actual life. Putting one on would have felt like a costume, an overt display that would give them something to react against, to dismiss as a desperate cry for attention. No, this had to be quieter, more profound. I pulled on a simple pair of worn jeans and a plain dark Henley shirt. Catching my reflection in the mirror, I saw what they never could. I didn't see the aimless drifter, the disappointment. I saw a man forged in crucibles they couldn't even fathom, and a calm, unnerving resolve settled over me. The plan taking shape in my mind was one of strategic patience, a concept I had learned under far more dangerous circumstances. I would drive to the station, I would walk inside and simply stand there. I would let my mother's panic, my father's bluster, and my sister's entitlement fill the air like a toxic gas. I would not say a single word in my own defense. I would let their drama play out, until it exhausted itself. I was counting on one simple fact: this was a military town. The local police force was full of veterans. They knew the names that mattered, the faces that carried a different kind of authority. I wasn't going to announce myself. I was going to let my reputation, the one I had earned in blood and silence, walk into the room for me. I had my evidence. It was etched into my skin and carried in my posture. I had the plan. All that was left was to choose the right moment to burn their perfect world to the ground. The police station was exactly as I'd imagined, sterile, smelling faintly of bleach, and bathed in the unforgiving fluorescent glow that makes everyone look guilty. The sound that hit me first, though, was the shrill, indignant tone of my mother's voice echoing from the waiting area. My family was in full performance mode. My sister, Chloe, was slumped in a chair, perfecting a look of tear-stained victimhood. My father was pacing in front of the front desk, lecturing the tired-looking desk sergeant about his rights and his daughter's pristine character. And my mother was alternating between dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue and glaring at the officer as if he were personally responsible for this injustice. They were a storm of entitlement in a sea of institutional calm. The moment they saw me, the storm turned in my direction. Finally, my mother hissed, rushing over. "What took you so long? Chloe is traumatized. You have to do something." My father joined in, getting in my face with a look of paternal rage that was reserved only for when the family's image was threatened. "You need to handle this. Go in there and tell them who we are. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." I just stood there, letting their words wash over me, a familiar tide of blame and expectation. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I simply existed in the space, my silence a stark contrast to their chaos, and I could see that my quiet unnerved them more than any argument ever could. Just as my father was winding up for another lecture, a door opened and an officer walked out. He was a young man, probably in his late 20s, with a sharp professional posture that told me he was likely a veteran. This was Officer Miller, and he held a clipboard and an expression of profound weariness. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My family immediately descended upon him. My mother launched into her "she's just a baby" routine, while my father tried to pull the "I'm an important man" in this community card. Officer Miller listened with a practiced patience, his eyes betraying nothing but a desire for this to be over. He was a wall of professionalism they couldn't seem to penetrate. His gaze swept over my hysterical mother and my blustering father, then my theatrically sobbing sister. And then, his eyes landed on me. It happened in an instant. He froze mid-syllable. His entire body went rigid, his back straightening into a ramrod-straight posture I recognized all too well. The exhaustion in his eyes vanished, replaced by a flash of disbelief, then dawning recognition, and finally, something that looked like pure, unadulterated awe. The clipboard in his hand seemed to suddenly weigh 1,000 pounds. He looked from my face, down to his paperwork, and then back up at me, his mouth slightly agape. The entire waiting room, which had been buzzing with my family's drama, fell completely and utterly silent. Even my parents stopped their performance, confused by the sudden shift in the officer's demeanor. Breaking the ringing silence, the officer spoke, and his voice was no longer that of a tired local cop. It was crisp, respectful, and directed only at me. "Sir," he said, the single word cutting through the air like a blade. He took a small, almost imperceptible step back. "Commander, last name? What are you doing here?" My parents' heads whipped around to stare at me, their faces masks of utter confusion. My father started to sputter. "Commander? What is he talking about? He's no—" But Officer Miller wasn't finished. He ignored my father completely, his attention locked on me as if I were the only person in the room. Then he turned his head slowly to look at my stunned, speechless family. He gestured toward me with his pen, his eyes wide with a question that would detonate their entire world. He looked at my mother, then my father, and then my sister, his voice laced with pure incredulity. "Wait, you're with him? You're the SEAL commanders and family?" The title hung in the air, an indictment and a revelation all at once. The word family came out of his mouth sounding like an accusation. The color drained from my mother's face, leaving her looking pale and ancient under the harsh lights. My father's jaw hung open, his bluster vanishing, replaced by a look of ghost-white shame. Chloe just stared, her fake tears forgotten. "To twist the knife," the officer added, addressing them but looking at me. "Ma'am, sir, your son is a living legend. My cousin served under him in Kandahar. He said he's one of the most respected men in the entire command." And in the ringing silence of that fluorescent-lit room, I didn't feel anger or victory. I just felt quiet. For the first time in my life, I was the one who held all the power. I spoke quietly with Officer Miller for a few minutes, away from my family. There was no need for threats or bluster. I gave him my word that Chloe's recklessness would be dealt with, that I would personally oversee any restitution for the damages, and that it wouldn't happen again. He just nodded, the deference still in his eyes. He saw the man, not the family. Because of who I was, my sister was given a chance she absolutely did not deserve. The legalities were handled with a quiet professionalism that left my family completely on the outside, looking in. For the first time in their lives, they were not the center of the universe. They were just accessories, bystanders to a life they knew nothing about. As we walked out into the pre-dawn chill of the parking lot, the silence between us was heavy and suffocating. My mother kept stealing glances at me, her expression a bewildered mix of fear and a strange, misplaced pride. My father seemed to have aged a decade, his usual confident posture now stooped and uncertain. Chloe just stared at the pavement, the shame finally burning through her spoiled entitlement. It was my father who broke the silence, his voice raspy and weak. "A SEAL. A commander," he mumbled, shaking his head. "Son, why? Why didn't you ever tell us?" I stopped walking and turned to face him, my expression unreadable. I looked at him, then at my mother, letting the weight of their question hang in the air. I thought of every dismissed achievement, every ignored phone call, every time they'd told me to be more like my sister. I thought of the failure they had painted me as to all their friends. "You never asked," I said, my voice low and even. "You were so busy telling me who I was that you never stopped for a second to see who I am. You just assumed." My mother's eyes welled up with genuine tears this time. "But we are so proud," she cried, reaching a hand out to me. "We are so proud of you." I looked at her hand but didn't take it. The internal ledger, the one I had been keeping for 20 years, was finally full. Her words were just another attempt to own my success, to make it about her. "No, you're not," I said, the words coming out with a quiet finality, devoid of anger. "You're proud of the title. You're proud of what that officer thinks of me. You weren't proud of me yesterday, when you thought I was a failure with no job. Your pride is 10 years too late and it means nothing to me now." I turned and walked to my truck without looking back, leaving them standing in the parking lot with the ruins of the world they had built. 1 year later. Life is different now. I'm no longer active duty, but my work is far from over. I work as a senior instructor, training the next generation of operators on a rugged, windswept stretch of coastline that feels like the edge of the world. My home is a small, simple house that overlooks the ocean. Some mornings I wake up before the sun, make a cup of coffee, and just watch the waves crash against the shore. The quiet isn't empty anymore, it's peaceful. It's earned. The men I work with don't know about my family. They know me by my actions, by the tone of my voice during a difficult exercise, by the quiet encouragement I offer when they think they've hit their limit. They know me for who I am. Here, my value isn't something that's debated or measured against someone else's. It's proven every day in the sweat and determination of the young men I have the honor to lead. My life is defined not by a narrative written for me, but by a purpose I chose for myself. I found a new family, a brotherhood forged in shared hardship and mutual respect, something my blood relatives could never understand. This is a life of substance, not of image. I am finally visible, seen for everything I am, by the people who matter. The ghost of the invisible son is gone for good. I still hear from my family sometimes. They leave long, rambling voicemails filled with awkward apologies and invitations to holidays I'll never attend. A distant aunt told me my parents brag about me constantly now, twisting the story to make it sound like they were in on it the whole time, that they always knew I was destined for greatness. Their attempts to reclaim the narrative are pathetic, but they no longer affect me. They are just voices from a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. I never answer their calls. I never listen to the voicemails for more than a few seconds. Their opinions, good or bad, have no power here. They are simply irrelevant. I learned that sometimes the only title that matters is the one you earn when no one is watching. If you've ever had to build your own success in silence, drop a comment below. Your story deserves to be seen. I salute you.